Although this story is going to be long. Mold. Mold. Mold is a byproduct of what's the real issue with mold? Moisture. It's a water issue. All right? Remember my 72 lawn ornament story? And I told you it was my second favorite story? Here's number one. As God is my witness, the guy's name is Michael Sims. If you ever meet Michael Sims, ask him this story. True story. When I got out of the corporate world, got into real estate, my wife started panicking. She's like, oh, we need income. So I took a job as the director for American Lead Labs. We did lead-based paint and all the environmental testing and all that. The guy that owned its name was Michael Sims. Michael was the best salesman in the world. Bar none, better than anybody I've ever seen. He could sell anything. Somebody told me once he could sell a ketchup sandwich to a girl in white gloves. Never heard that until that, but it was pretty cool. You get the point. So Mike comes to me one day and he says, Raymond, this new thing, now remember this is 1999. He said, this new thing's indoor air quality. Can you measure mold? I'm like, yes, I know how to do the sampling to measure mold. All right? He's like, I can sell this if you can do the technical part. I said, I can do the technical part. So let's back up because there's one other thing I need to tell you. You guys ever heard of black mold? Black mold's called Stachybotrys, all right? It's deadly. Less than 3% of all the mold in the world is Stachybotrys. Odds are you probably have never really seen it. A lot of people think they've seen it, but it's that black fuzzy mold. That's not it. Stachybotrys looks like pudding skin. You guys ever made pudding, put it in the refrigerator, then it gets that little skin on the top, you can actually write your name in it? It's real oily and slick and greasy, or greasy, depending on where you're from. It lives on, it lives on cellulose. So it lives on drywall, paper, wood. It doesn't grow on oranges or bread. Those are all other types of mold. Cladosporium, Stachybotrys, all of these. No, you're going to love the punchline, trust me. She's giving me the international let's go sign. You're going to be here all day, don't worry about it. So, back to the story. So Mike calls me and says, hey, we got our first gig. It's in Richmond, Indiana. It's at a house where it's provided by Richmond. In the house, there were 4 mentally handicapped kids with Down syndrome. In the basement, there were nurses that lived that kind of helped them to make sure, because they were transitioning into real life, all right? So the nurses were there just to kind of help them do stuff. So we get called by this, and they say, we got mold in the basement. Can you come look at it? So we go in there, get mold in the basement. We walk down the stairs into the back room, and they've got the cinder block wall, the gray cinder block wall. On the back wall, in the middle of the gray cinder block wall, is this mold that's growing. And she's like, I think this is black mold. We don't want the kids to get in trouble. Can we clean this? Okay? Now, what do you know about that mold that I just told you?
You don't know what it is. You don't see it.
You don't know, but what do you know it's not? What did I tell you black mold has to grow on? Has to have cellulose as food product. All right, drywall, wood, paper. This is in the middle of a block cement wall. It is not Stachybotrys. It can't be. We know that just looking at it because it's not in the right place. That's like saying you got cladosporium growing in your shower. No, it won't grow in there. It's got to grow on a food like bread. All right, so looking at this, we know it's not black mold because it's not in the right place. So, Michael Sims leaned forward and licked the mold off the wall. Yes, The nurse, and you've seen those cartoons where they run around, their arms are flailing. This nurse starts running around us. Oh my God, he's going to die, he's going to die. And Mike goes, I think that's cladosporium. And she's freaking out. So I'm like, oh my God. So I do the tape sample, take the tape sample. I'm like, look, he went to school for this. He's trained. Don't worry. He knows what he's doing. This is our first one we've ever done. He's trained. Don't worry. He's went to school for it. And she's like, is he okay? Yeah, he's going to be fine. No problem. He knows what he's doing. So we get in the car, and Mike looks at me and goes, let's go to a gas station. This tastes like shit. I'm like, well, dumbass, you did it. Turns out it was cladosporium. He was right. It was a lucky guess on his part. But the point being, and I asked him, so what the heck were you doing? He goes, I was trying to prove to her that those kids could eat that mold and it wouldn't kill them. That was his point. But he literally, unbeknownst to either one of us, just leaned forward and licked the mold off the wall. God is my witness, swear on a stack of comic books. All right? Dude, this was an adult person that owned this lead lab. But when I asked him why, think about his answer was the best thing he could have ever done in the world. Because this nurse was worried that it was going to hurt his kids. He literally told her they could eat this mold and it won't kill them. Oh, he could sell. That was, at that point, we had already sold the job. Matter of fact, we went back 5 times and cleaned that wall because they never wanted to address their true issue, which was moisture. The grading on their house was wrong and the water was leaking into the house, rainwater, and that wall just kept getting mold, and then we'd go back and clean it, and we did it 5 or 6 times at like $2,000 a pop. And but they didn't want to spend 10 or 20,000 to regrade the property out front. They'd rather spend, as most cities and states, oh, we don't want to spend that big number. We do this little number 5 or 10 times. Yeah, over and over and over. The point being was he ate the mold. And if you think about it, anybody here allergic to penicillin? You guys would die. Everybody else that takes penicillin, guess what it is? It's a mold spore. You're eating mold, all right? And that's what Mike was trying to prove, that, hey, this is not the dangerous kind. I can eat it. But I didn't know he was going to do it. It just freaked her out, freaked me out to see him do it. Mold is a water problem. It works like spores. It's a susceptibility issue. There are people in here that would die if you ate penicillin. There are other people that take it on a regular basis to cure problems. There never will be a mold standard. I told you lead affects all humans the exact same way. Mold does not. My first wife was so allergic to every kind of mold, she could literally stop at a house in the front door and go, I can smell the mold. Can you? I'm like, no. She was that susceptible. She actually took shots for a year. Every Monday she would go and take the shots. She was allergic to everything. Yeah. Yeah, and if you tried to build a standard to protect that person, the cost would be astronomical. So there never will be a mold standard. They just can't do it because it works on spores and susceptibility and allergens. Some people are more allergic to items than others. Where lead-based paint, we know at what level causes problems because it affects all humans the exact same way.
What does black mold look like once it's dying, if it's not on, like if it's wet, crazy looking?
Well, it won't grow if it's not on that.
Right. It doesn't like shrivel up, but then it kind of would look like maybe another mold though?
No, because black mold is very stringy, wet, slimy looking, where the black fuzzy one is aspergillus, and there are molds that grow on certain things. That's what I'm saying. The green mold, like on your orange, is different than blue mold that grows on your bread. Different than the black, and I'm using finger quotes, mold that you get in your bathtub that most of you call mildew. All right? They're all different kinds of mold. There's 9,000 different breeds of mold. Do what? Yeah. Call someone and fix it.
It'll still look pretty different.
It'll definitely be different.
It kind of looks like sprouts, bean sprouts, from what I'm.
Kind of looks like bean sprouts.
Well, it comes up, right?
Well,
Well, so if you're so interested in, to me it looks like a bean sprout. Is that what it looks like?
well, that doesn't look good. I think you're looking at a flat picture of it against a screen.
I think when it starts, it has like it looks like a tiny little spore, and then it just like.
Well, the odds are none of you have seen Stachybobitis in reality. You may have. I don't know. The problem with it is there's no standard, and you have to take it to a lab to get it grown to find out what kind it is. And they create these things called colony-forming units, so there's no standard. And the other problem with that is you can measure your inside of your house. That doesn't mean your house is infected, because unless you measure outside of your house, because farmhouses may have a different count because of all the grains that are around them that have mold on them, different than a city house has. So people that live in the farm may have a different set of regulations than perhaps the city, especially if you're highly allergic. All right. Groundwater. Groundwater is a problem. Let's put it this way. Contamination of the groundwater is a problem. And in Indiana, we particularly have a problem because we got a very high groundwater table, as low as 14 feet in some places, deeper in others, all right? Most of the city inside of the 465 loop has a lot of soil in it that has a lot of clay content. That's really good for the radon issue. We don't have a lot of issues with radon in the inner city because of the way the soil has got clay. Now, Brown County, Martinsville, where there's a lot of caves and caverns and you can get up through the cracks, yeah, you got that problem. But that soil also causes a problem with drinking water. What happens if you spill something on the ground, it seeps into the ground, hits that clay surface and runs right to the water reservoir? Not a big deal if it's your root beer from Speedway, right? But what if it's that PCB from that tower that broke when the car accident hit the light pole, pole fell over, broke that open, and the PCBs are now spilling on the floor or on the ground. Seeks into the water, goes right to the ground. So groundwater actually is a very important issue, and there is an act that was created called the Safe Drinking Water Act. It was passed in 1974 by which president? Who actually created EPA? 74? Holy crap, dude. Nixon. Yeah. I don't know. History may have changed. Maybe it was. Maybe he was alive in 74. You guys remember the movie Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck and all that? I was standing in line renting a movie at this video store back for you young kids when there was these places you could go and rent movies. It's called a video store. I was standing in line at the video store, and the girl working behind the counter was about 16, and she was talking to another girl in line behind us who was about 16 or 17, and there were 3 guys in line, and we're all standing there, and the one girl says, "Have you seen Pearl Harbor?" And the other girl goes, "Yeah. Don't tell me the ending. I don't know how it ends." And the 3 guys look at each other, and we're like, "Oh my God. I think we're pretty sure we know how that one ended." The U.S. gets the crap kicked out of them. And she's like, no, I mean the love story with Ben Affleck. I know how that ends. I'm like, well, good, because you had me worried there for a minute. I didn't know if history had changed. So, Safe Drinking Water Act was put in place by Nixon in 1974, which put standards in place for the groundwater and drinking water to make sure that there was no pollutants in that. Now we've got this problem with what they call fracking. Fracking is where they take high-pressure water and drive it into the ground to crack the shale so that it brings up oil. The problem is all the water they're shooting into the ground, it's got to come up somewhere, and that's going to end up in somebody's drinking water or in their lake or something like that. So you got to be real careful with that. Let's change audio file.